The scorched earth of West Texas seemed to swallow hope whole, and Zelda Emerson had learned that lesson in blood and ash when the Comanche raid took everything from her 3 years ago in 1873. She stood behind the counter of the general store in Jefferson, Texas, her hands methodical as they wrapped brown paper around a pound of coffee beans, her expression blank as creek stone. The customer, Mrs. Henderson, prattled on about the upcoming church social, but Zelda barely heard her. She had perfected the art of nodding at appropriate intervals while keeping her mind carefully empty, a survival skill she had honed since that terrible night when flames consumed her family's homestead, and everyone she loved perished in the attack. "You really should come, dear Mrs. Henderson insisted, her plump face creased with concern that Zelda found suffocating rather than comforting. "A young woman of 21 shouldn't spend all her time working. You need to live a little." Zelda managed a thin smile that never reached her eyes. "I appreciate the invitation, madam, but Mr. Thornton needs me here on Saturday evenings to take inventory." It was a lie. Mr. Thornton, the elderly store owner, had never asked her to work Saturdays. But lies came easier than admitting the truth, that the thought of sitting in a room full of laughing, dancing people made her chest tighten until she could not breathe. Joy felt like a betrayal of the dead. Mrs. Henderson sighed and took her package, dropping coins into Zelda's palm. "One day, you will need to let yourself heal, child." The words haunted Zelda as she swept the wooden floors after closing time, dust motes dancing in the amber light streaming through the storefront windows. Heal, as if grief were a simple wound that time could mend. She had tried everything in those first raw months, prayer and tears and rage, but nothing filled the hollow space where her heart used to be. Her parents, her 2 younger brothers, all gone. She had survived only because she had been in Jefferson that day, delivering eggs to the hotel restaurant. The guilt of survival weighed heavier than the grief sometimes. She was locking the front door when she noticed the stranger. He sat astride a dappled gray horse across the dusty street, his silhouette backlit by the setting sun. Even from a distance, she could tell he was watching the store, watching her. Zelda's hand instinctively moved to the small pistol she kept in her skirt pocket, a habit born of hard experience. But before she could decide whether to retreat inside, the rider tipped his hat and guided his horse down the street toward the livery stable. Zelda released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Jefferson was a growing town, situated along the Big Cypress Bayou, and strangers passed through regularly, especially cattlemen and traders using the waterway for commerce. Still, 3 years of living in constant vigilance had taught her to notice everyone, to always be prepared to run. She walked the 3 blocks to her boarding house, a modest establishment run by a widow named Mrs. Campbell. Her room was small but clean, containing a narrow bed, a washstand, and a trunk holding everything she owned in the world. She had saved nearly every penny of her wages for the past 3 years, though she had no clear idea what she was saving for. The future stretched before her like an empty road leading nowhere. That night, she dreamed of fire again. The next morning dawned hot and humid, typical for East Texas in July. Zelda arrived at the general store at 6 o'clock sharp, as she did every weekday, to help Mr. Thornton prepare for the day's business. The old man was already inside, but he was not alone. The stranger from the previous evening stood at the counter, and in the morning light, Zelda could see him clearly for the first time. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of hard physical labor. His dark hair needed cutting and curled slightly at his collar. He wore typical cowboy attire, dusty from travel, and his tanned face suggested he spent most of his time outdoors. But what struck Zelda most were his eyes, a warm brown that crinkled at the corners when he smiled at something Mr. Thornton said. There was kindness in those eyes, a quality that immediately made Zelda distrust him. Kind people were the most dangerous in her experience. They made you hope. "Ah, Zelda, perfect timing," Mr. Thornton called out, his weathered face brightening. "This is Dalton Xavier. He is looking to purchase some supplies. I need to step out for a moment to speak with the freight manager next door. Would you mind helping him?" Before Zelda could protest, Mr. Thornton grabbed his hat and disappeared out the door, leaving her alone with the stranger. She stood frozen for a moment, then forced herself to walk behind the counter, maintaining as much distance as possible. "Good morning, miss," Dalton Xavier said, and his voice matched his eyes, warm and genuine. "I apologize for the imposition. I can come back later if you are busy." "What do you need?" Zelda kept her tone businesslike, her gaze fixed on the ledger book in front of her rather than his face. If her curtness bothered him, he did not show it. "I am setting up a horse ranch about 10 miles north of here. Bought the old Patterson place. I need basic supplies to get started: flour, coffee, beans, salt pork, things like that. Also some tools if you stock them. Hammer, nails, saw, wire for fencing." Zelda began pulling items from the shelves, her movements efficient and practiced. As she worked, she could feel his eyes on her, not in the leering way some men looked at women, but with a curiosity that made her uncomfortable in a different way. "You are very efficient," he commented. "How long have you worked here?" "3 years. She did not elaborate. "Jefferson seems like a nice town. Growing, from what I can see. The steamboat trade must bring in good business." "Yes." He fell silent, perhaps recognizing that she had no interest in conversation. But as she tallied his purchases, writing each item carefully in the ledger, he spoke again, more softly this time. "I do not mean to pry, miss, but you seem like someone who has known trouble. I recognize the look because I have worn it myself." Zelda's hand stilled on the page. She forced herself to finish writing the number, then looked up at him directly for the first time. "Your total is $12.40. He held her gaze for a long moment, and she saw no pity there, only understanding. Somehow that was worse. He counted out the money and placed it on the counter. "Thank you for your help, Miss Emerson," he said, reading her name from the ledger. "I will likely be back in a few days for more supplies. We are open 6 days a week, sunrise to sunset." She began wrapping his purchases in brown paper and twine. He gathered his supplies but paused at the door. "For what it is worth, I came to Texas to start over too. Sometimes a new beginning is possible, even when it does not feel like it." Then he was gone, the bell above the door chiming his departure. Zelda stood alone in the store, her hands trembling slightly. She clenched them into fists, angry at herself for the reaction. She did not want wisdom from strangers. She did not want anything from anyone. But that night, for the first time in months, she did not dream of fire. Over the following weeks, Dalton Xavier became a regular customer at the general store. He came to town every few days, always needing something for his ranch: nails or rope or feed or medicine for his horses. He was unfailingly polite, never pushing conversation but always offering a kind word or a genuine smile. Zelda maintained her professional distance, answering his questions about products, but never volunteering personal information. Yet despite her resolve, she found herself noticing things about him. The way he always thanked her sincerely, looking her in the eyes when he did so. How he never complained about prices or tried to negotiate, understanding that she had no control over such matters. The gentleness with which he handled a puppy that had wandered into the store one afternoon, carrying it outside and setting it down carefully before shooing it toward home. You are softening toward him, Mr. Thornton observed one evening as they closed up shop. The old man had a knowing twinkle in his eye that made Zelda flush. I treat all customers with equal courtesy, she replied stiffly. Of course you do, but you do not watch all customers through the window after they leave. Had she been that obvious, Zelda felt her cheeks burn hotter. I was simply making sure he secured his packages properly on his horse. Mr. Thornton chuckled. Zelda, my dear, I have watched you these past 3 years, building walls around your heart stone by stone. I understand why, and I do not blame you for it. But that young man seems decent, and it would not hurt you to have a conversation with him that consists of more than yes, no, and your total is such and such. You do not know anything about him, Zelda protested. He could be anyone, true enough. So I asked around. Mr. Thornton settled onto the stool behind the counter with a satisfied grunt. Dalton Xavier, 24 years old, originally from Missouri, lost his parents and younger sister to cholera 5 years back when he was just 19. Spent the next few years working as a ranch hand all over the West, saved every penny and finally bought his own place. The men at the livery say he is good with horses, gentle but firm. Sheriff Mackey says he has not caused any trouble, pays his bills, minds his own business. Seems like a solid young man trying to build a life, same as anyone. Zelda absorbed this information silently. So he had known loss too, devastating loss at a young age. That explained the understanding she had seen in his eyes that first morning. I am not looking for anything, Mr. Thornton, she said finally. Not friendship, not romance, not anything. I am content as I am. The old man's expression turned sad. Content is not the same as happy, child, and you deserve happiness, whether you believe it or not. That conversation haunted Zelda over the following days. She had convinced herself that merely surviving was enough, that the absence of acute pain constituted a kind of peace. But Mr. Thornton's words had planted a seed of doubt. Was she truly content, or had she simply grown numb? She was still wrestling with these thoughts when Dalton came into the store on a Thursday afternoon in early August. He looked tired, his shirt dusty and his face drawn, but he still managed to smile when he saw her. Good afternoon, Miss Emerson. I need some medical supplies if you have them. Bandages, antiseptic, anything useful for treating injuries. Zelda felt a spike of concern that surprised her. Are you hurt? Not me, one of my horses. Got tangled in some old barbed wire I had not cleared yet. Cut up her legs pretty badly. His jaw tightened. My own damn fault for not checking the entire property line before letting her into that pasture. How bad is it? Zelda asked, gathering the supplies he needed. Bad enough. I got the bleeding stopped, but I want to make sure the wounds do not fester. She is a good mare, steady and smart. I would hate to lose her to my own carelessness. There was genuine pain in his voice, and Zelda found herself speaking before she could think better of it. My father used to raise horses. He taught me some veterinary care. If you want, I could look at her after I finish work. Sometimes a second opinion helps. Dalton's surprise was evident, but he quickly recovered. I would appreciate that very much, Miss Emerson. I could wait and escort you out to the ranch if Mr. Thornton can spare you a bit early. Mr. Thornton, who had been conspicuously sorting through receipts nearby, immediately agreed. Of course, of course. You go right ahead, Zelda. We have had a slow day anyway. An hour later, Zelda found herself riding in a buckboard wagon beside Dalton Xavier, heading north out of Jefferson. It was the first time she had left town since moving there 3 years ago, and the openness of the landscape made her chest tighten with anxiety. But Dalton seemed to sense her discomfort and kept up a gentle stream of conversation that required little response from her. I have about 200 acres, he explained as they drove. It is not much compared to some of the big ranches, but it is enough to start with. Good grazing, a decent creek that runs year-round, and the house is solid, though it needs work. I have been focusing on building up my breeding stock, buying young horses with good bloodlines and training them properly. There is always a market for well-trained horses, especially with the army and the cattle ranchers. Zelda found herself interested despite her reservations. How many horses do you have currently? 12. Not counting the 3 foals born this spring. I am hoping to double that in the next year or two. His hands were easy on the reins, his movements confident but never harsh. Eventually, I would like to specialize in working horses, cutting horses, and cow ponies. The kind that can think for themselves and partner with a rider rather than just obey commands. They crested a small rise, and Dalton's ranch came into view. The house was modest, a simple wooden structure with a covered porch, but it looked well maintained. Behind it stood a barn, several corrals, and various outbuildings in different states of repair. The land rolled gently, covered in prairie grass that rippled like water in the afternoon breeze. Despite herself, Zelda felt something loosen in her chest. It was beautiful in a spare, honest way. The injured mare stood in a shaded corral near the barn, favoring her front left leg. As they approached, Zelda could see the cuts clearly, deep gashes wrapped in makeshift bandages that were already seeping blood. "Let me see her," Zelda said, slipping down from the wagon before Dalton could help her. The mare was nervous, dancing sideways as Zelda entered the corral, but Dalton spoke to her in a low, soothing voice that calmed both the horse and, oddly, Zelda herself. She approached slowly, letting the mare sniff her hand before gently examining the wounds. Memory flooded back, her father's patient voice teaching her how to assess an injury, how to touch with firm gentleness so the horse understood you meant to help, not harm. Her hands moved with a confidence she had forgotten she possessed, unwrapping the bandages and cleaning the wounds with fresh water from the pump. "The cuts are deep, but they are clean," she reported. "No major tendons damaged from what I can tell. She will heal, but you need to keep the wounds dressed and change the bandages twice daily. I will make you a poultice to draw out any infection." "You know your way around horses," Dalton observed, watching her work with obvious respect. "My father believed everyone in the family should know practical skills. He taught me animal husbandry, basic veterinary care, even how to shoe a horse." The words came easily, perhaps because her hands were busy and she did not have to look at him while she spoke. "He said knowledge was the one thing that could never be taken from you. He sounds like he was a wise man." "He was." Zelda's throat tightened. "He died 3 years ago, along with my mother and brothers." She had not spoken those words aloud to anyone in Jefferson except Mr. Thornton, and even then only in the barest terms necessary to explain why she needed employment. But here, with her hands buried in a horse's mane and the warm Texas sun on her back, the words emerged almost against her will. Dalton was quiet for a long moment. "I am sorry, truly sorry. Losing family is a wound that never quite heals." "No, it does not." Zelda finished wrapping the mare's leg with fresh bandages. "But you learn to carry it. What choice is there? None that I have found. Though some days the weight feels lighter than others." Zelda straightened and met his gaze. In his brown eyes, she saw the same scars she carried, the same hard-won survival. But she also saw something she had lost, a flicker of hope that tomorrow might be better than today. "I should make that poultice," she said, breaking eye contact. "Do you have comfrey or yarrow growing anywhere nearby? I have seen some wild herbs near the creek. I am not sure what they are, but you are welcome to look." They walked down to the creek together, and Zelda found what she needed: comfrey with its rough leaves and purple flowers, plus some wild garlic that would help fight infection. As she gathered the plants, Dalton asked questions about their properties, genuinely interested in learning. His attention was flattering in a way that made Zelda uncomfortable, not because it was unwanted, but because she found herself wanting it. In the barn, she crushed the herbs with a mortar and pestle Dalton provided, mixing them with lard to create a thick green paste. As she worked, she became aware of Dalton moving around the barn, doing evening chores, feeding horses and checking water troughs. There was something deeply peaceful about the domestic scene, the quiet industry of two people working companionably in shared space. "This should be applied to the wounds after you clean them each time," Zelda explained, showing Dalton the finished poultice. "It will help them heal faster and prevent infection. In a few days, if she is not showing signs of fever or swelling, she should be on the mend." "Thank you, Miss Emerson. This is far more than I had any right to expect when I asked for your help." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something, then continued. "It is getting late, and I should get you back to town before dark, but I was wondering, would you consider staying for supper? Nothing fancy, just stew and cornbread, but it seems poor repayment to send you home hungry after you came all this way." Zelda knew she should refuse. Accepting his hospitality would imply a familiarity that frightened her. But the sun was already sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and the thought of the long ride back to her empty boarding house room held no appeal. "All right," she heard herself say, "but I cannot stay late. Mrs. Campbell worries if I am out after dark." Dalton's smile was bright enough to rival the sunset. "Of course, I will have you back well before then." The house interior was sparse but clean, with simple furniture and few personal touches. Dalton clearly spent most of his time working rather than decorating. But the stew simmering over the fire smelled wonderful, rich with beef and vegetables, and Zelda realized she had skipped lunch and was ravenous. They ate at a small wooden table, and to Zelda's surprise, conversation came easier than she expected. Dalton talked about his plans for the ranch, the bloodlines he was trying to develop, the challenges of building a business from nothing. He asked her opinion on things, actually listening when she spoke and considering her words seriously. "You have a good mind for this," he said at one point. "Have you ever thought about working with horses again?" Zelda shook her head. "I left that life behind. The general store suits me fine." "Does it?" Dalton's gaze was gentle but penetrating. "Forgive me for being forward, Miss Emerson, but you seem like someone going through the motions of life rather than living it." His words struck too close to home. Zelda set down her spoon with a sharp click. "You know nothing about me or my life." "You are right, I do not. But I know something about grief and how it can trap you in a kind of half-existence. After my family died, I spent 2 years drifting, working just enough to eat, never staying anywhere long enough to form connections. I told myself I was fine, that I did not need anything or anyone. But I was not fine. I was slowly dying inside, becoming a ghost of myself." "What changed?" The question emerged before Zelda could stop it. Dalton leaned back in his chair, his expression distant with memory. "I was working on a ranch in Colorado, and the owner was this old Mexican man named Esteban. One day, he found me sitting alone by the bunkhouse when everyone else was at a fiesta in town. He asked me why I was not celebrating, and I gave him some excuse about being tired. He looked at me with these knowing eyes and said, 'The dead do not want you to stop living, young man. They want you to live big enough for both them and yourself. Anything less dishonors their memory.'" Zelda felt tears prick her eyes. "That is easier said than done." "It is the hardest thing in the world," Dalton agreed. "But I realized he was right. My parents and my sister Hannah, they loved life. They loved laughter and music and simple joys. By shutting myself off from all of that, I was not honoring them. I was letting their deaths claim me too, just more slowly. So you decided to start over. I decided to try. Some days are better than others. Some nights I still wake up expecting to hear Hannah singing in the kitchen or my father's laugh. But I get up anyway, and I work on building something that would make them proud. And slowly, it has started to feel like enough. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the crackle of the fire and the distant whinny of horses settling for the night. Zelda thought about his words, turning them over in her mind like river stones. Could it be true? Would her family want her to remain frozen in grief, or would they want her to find joy again? She thought of her father, his booming laugh and generous spirit. Her mother, who found beauty in the smallest things, a perfect rose, a bird's song, the way morning light fell through the kitchen window. Her brothers, always full of mischief and adventure. What would they think if they could see her now, moving through life like a sleepwalker, deliberately shutting out anything that might make her feel? I should go, she said abruptly, standing up. It is getting late. If Dalton was disappointed by her sudden withdrawal, he did not show it. He simply nodded and retrieved his hat. The ride back to Jefferson was quieter than the ride out, but it was a comfortable quiet, not awkward. When they reached the boarding house, Dalton helped her down from the wagon, his hands steady at her waist. "Thank you again for your help with the mare," he said. "Would you be willing to come back in a few days to check on her progress? I would pay you for your time and expertise, of course." Zelda knew she should say no. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat back into her safe, numb existence. But something in her had shifted during the evening, some long dormant part of herself stirring back to life. "I will come on Sunday after church," she said, "but you do not need to pay me. Consider it a return of your hospitality." His smile was warm in the twilight. "Then I will look forward to Sunday, Miss Emerson." As she lay in bed that night, Zelda thought about Dalton's words. The dead do not want you to stop living. She had been so focused on not forgetting, on keeping her grief fresh as a way of keeping her family's memory alive, that she had never considered this perspective. Would her parents truly want her to live like this, joyless and isolated? The answer came with painful clarity. No, they would not. Sunday dawned clear and bright, and for the first time in 3 years, Zelda felt something like anticipation as she dressed for church. She chose her best dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, then immediately felt foolish for the choice. What did it matter what she wore to check on a horse? But she did not change. After the service, she declined Mrs. Campbell's invitation to Sunday dinner and borrowed the boarding house's small cart and horse, promising to return before dark. The ride to Dalton's ranch felt shorter this time, the landscape less threatening and more simply beautiful. She noticed things she had not seen on the first trip: wildflowers blooming in defiance of the summer heat, a hawk circling lazily overhead, the way the light filtered through the cottonwood trees along the creek. Dalton was waiting for her, freshly washed and wearing a clean shirt. His face lit up when he saw her approach, and Zelda felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest. "Miss Emerson, welcome. The mare has been doing much better. I have been changing the bandages just as you showed me and applying the poultice twice daily. Come see." The mare's wounds looked significantly better, the edges already beginning to knit together with healthy pink tissue. There was no sign of infection, and the horse seemed in good spirits, nuzzling Dalton's pockets hopefully for treats. "She is healing well," Zelda confirmed. "You have done an excellent job caring for her. At this rate, she should be completely healed in a few weeks, though you will want to keep her out of heavy work for a while longer." I could not have done it without your help and guidance." Dalton fed the mare a piece of apple, his expression thoughtful. "You really do have a gift with horses. It seems a shame for that knowledge to go unused." Zelda stroked the mare's neck, enjoying the warm silkiness of her coat. "I have not been around horses much since my family died. Our ranch was destroyed in the attack and the surviving stock was scattered or stolen. I could not bear the thought of starting over. But you are here now," Dalton pointed out gently. "And unless I am misreading things, you are enjoying yourself." He was right, and Zelda could not deny it. Being around horses again awakened something in her, a connection to her past that was not entirely painful. These were good memories. Her father teaching her to gentle a colt, her mother laughing as a foal tried to nurse from her apron pocket, her brothers racing each other bareback across the fields. "I suppose I am," she admitted. "Then you should come by whenever you want." "You would be doing me a favor, actually. I need help evaluating some horses I am thinking of buying at auction next month, and I trust your judgment more than my own limited experience. Plus," he added with a grin, "the horses like you better than they like me." Zelda found herself smiling back, a real smile that felt strange on her face after so long. "They do not like you better. They just know you have treats in your pockets." "Fair point. So will you come? Not as a customer or an employee, but as a friend." The word hung in the air between them, weighted with possibility. Zelda had not had a friend in 3 years, had not allowed herself the vulnerability that friendship required. But standing here in the warm sunshine with this kind man who understood loss and had somehow found a way through it, she felt the walls around her heart develop the first hairline cracks. "I will come," she said quietly. "As a friend." Over the following weeks, Zelda fell into a new rhythm. She still worked at the general store during weekdays, but she spent her Sundays at Dalton's ranch. Sometimes she helped him with the horses, evaluating new stock or training young colts. Sometimes they simply sat on his porch in the evening, drinking coffee and talking about everything and nothing. Dalton proved to be an easy companion. He never pushed her to talk about painful subjects, but when she volunteered memories of her family, he listened with genuine interest and compassion. In turn, he shared stories of his own childhood, his father who had been a lawyer, his mother who loved gardening, his sister Hannah who had wanted to be a teacher. "She was only 13 when the cholera hit," Dalton said one evening, his voice heavy with old grief. "She died first, then my mother, then my father. I was 19 and suddenly completely alone in the world. I did not handle it well." "How could anyone handle that well?" Zelda asked. They were sitting on the porch steps, watching the sun set in a blaze of crimson and gold. "I suppose. But I made it worse by pushing away everyone who tried to help. Friends, extended family, the pastor who had baptized me as a baby. I was so angry at God, at the world, at myself for surviving when they did not. I burned every bridge I had and then wondered why I felt so isolated." "Is that why you came to Texas? To get away from the memories?" Dalton shook his head. "I came to Texas because I finally realized I was carrying the memories with me anyway. No amount of running would change that. So I decided to stop running and start building instead. Build something my family would be proud of, something that honored the values they taught me." "What values were those?" "Honesty, hard work, kindness, believing the best in people until they prove otherwise. My father used to say that you measure a man's worth not by what he takes from the world, but by what he gives back." Zelda pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "I am not sure I have anything to give back. I feel like I am barely holding myself together most days." "But you are holding yourself together," Dalton pointed out. You survived something terrible, and instead of crumbling, you found work, built a life, kept going. That takes incredible strength, Zelda." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it made her heart skip. She should correct him, insist he call her Miss Emerson, maintain the proper distance. But she did not want distance anymore, not from him. "My parents died because I was not there," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "If I had been home, maybe I could have warned them, helped them escape, done something. Instead, I was in town selling eggs like it was any normal day while they were being slaughtered." "Zelda, no." Dalton turned to face her fully, his expression intense. "You cannot blame yourself for surviving. If you had been there, you would be dead too. That is not better. That is not what they would have wanted." "How do you know what they would have wanted?" She was crying now, hot tears streaming down her face. "How can you possibly know? Because every parent wants their child to live. Every parent would sacrifice themselves 1,000 times over to keep their child safe. Your being in town that day was not abandonment or cowardice. It was their last gift to you, the gift of a future." The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow, and suddenly she was sobbing, 3 years of held-back grief pouring out in great wrenching gasps. Dalton pulled her close, wrapping his strong arms around her, and she buried her face in his chest and wept. He did not try to shush her or tell her everything would be all right. He simply held her, steady as a mountain, while the storm raged through her. When the tears finally subsided, Zelda felt emptied out but somehow lighter, as if some terrible poison had been drained from her system. She pulled back, embarrassed by her outburst, but Dalton gently wiped her tears with his thumb. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Never apologize for grief. It is the price we pay for love, and that means it has value." They sat together as full darkness fell, the stars emerging one by one overhead. Somewhere nearby, a whippoorwill called its lonely song. Zelda felt Dalton's arm still around her shoulders, warm and solid, and for the first time since the night of the raid, she felt something other than numb. She felt safe. The realization terrified her. Safety was an illusion, something that could be ripped away in an instant. Allowing herself to feel safe, to trust in the permanence of anything or anyone, was asking to be destroyed again. But even as these thoughts circled her mind, she found herself leaning into Dalton's embrace, choosing fragile hope over certain emptiness. "I should go," she said eventually. "Mrs. Campbell will worry, I know." But neither of them moved for a long moment. Finally, Dalton stood and helped her to her feet. "Let me drive you back. You do not need to do that every time. I can manage the cart myself." "I know you can, but I want to make sure you get home safely. Humor me." The gentle teasing in his voice made her smile. "All right. But you are spoiling me." "Good. You deserve a little spoiling." On the ride back to Jefferson, Zelda felt different, as if some fundamental shift had occurred inside her. The landscape looked the same, but she was seeing it with new eyes, noticing beauty instead of only potential danger. The night air felt soft on her skin rather than threatening. The man beside her was no longer a stranger to be kept at arm's length, but someone she was beginning to trust, beginning to care for. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it filled her with a tentative warmth. "Dalton," she said as they neared the boarding house. "Thank you. For tonight, for listening, for understanding. It helped more than you know." "You do not need to thank me. I am just glad I could be there when you needed someone. Will you come to dinner at the boarding house next Sunday, Mrs. Campbell makes a wonderful roast chicken, and I think it is time I started accepting her invitations to join the communal table, but I would like a friendly face there." Dalton's smile was bright even in the darkness. "I would be honored." The following Sunday, Dalton arrived at the boarding house promptly at noon, wearing a suit that was slightly too large in the shoulders and carrying a bunch of wildflowers he had clearly picked himself. Mrs. Campbell was charmed immediately, and the other boarders, two elderly brothers and a young schoolteacher named Miss Potter, welcomed him warmly. Zelda watched him navigate the social situation with easy grace, answering questions about his ranch and asking interested questions about everyone else's lives. He praised Mrs. Campbell's cooking sincerely, helped clear the dishes without being asked, and told a funny story about a stubborn horse that had everyone laughing. This was a side of Dalton she had not seen before, and it made her like him even more. He was not just kind in private moments, but genuinely good, the sort of man who made the world around him better simply by being in it. After dinner, they walked through Jefferson's small downtown, past the courthouse and the churches, the hotels and saloons that served the steamboat traffic. It was a fine October afternoon, the brutal heat of summer finally breaking into something cooler and more pleasant. "Jefferson is a good town," Dalton observed. "I can see why you chose to settle here." "I did not exactly choose it. It was just where I happened to be when everything fell apart and I needed work immediately. Mr. Thornton took a chance on me, and I have been grateful ever since." "But you have chosen to stay," Dalton pointed out. "You could have moved on, gone anywhere. You stayed here and built a life." Zelda considered this. "I suppose I felt like I owed it to Mr. Thornton to stay. He has been kind to me when he had no reason to be. Loyalty is a fine quality, but you should not feel obligated to stay somewhere just out of gratitude. Life is too short to spend it in a place that does not make you happy." "Are you suggesting I should leave Jefferson?" Zelda felt an unexpected pang at the thought. "No, not at all. I am just saying that wherever you are, it should be because you want to be there, not because you feel trapped by circumstance." They walked in silence for a bit, past houses where families gathered on porches to enjoy the pleasant weather. Children played in yards, their laughter high and sweet. An old dog dozed in a patch of sunshine. It was all so peaceful, so ordinary, and Zelda felt a bittersweet ache at the normalcy of it all. "Can I tell you something I have never told anyone?" Dalton asked suddenly. "Of course. Sometimes I feel guilty for being happy, or even for wanting to be happy, like I am betraying my family's memory by moving forward with my life." He scuffed his boot against the dirt road. "Is that foolish? If it is, then I am foolish too. I have felt that way every single day since the raid." Dalton stopped walking and turned to face her. "So what do we do? How do we give ourselves permission to live again? I do not know. But maybe we figure it out together." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. This was more than friendship now, and they both knew it. There was something growing between them, tender as a new shoot but undeniably present. Dalton reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was calloused from hard work, warm and solid. Zelda's first instinct was to retreat, but she forced herself to stay still, to accept this simple gesture of connection. "I would like that very much," Dalton said softly, "figuring it out together." As autumn deepened into winter, Zelda and Dalton spent increasing amounts of time together. Their relationship developed slowly, respectfully, without pressure or demands. Dalton seemed to understand instinctively that Zelda needed patience, needed to move at her own pace toward trust and intimacy. He courted her properly, asking permission before calling on her, bringing small gifts that showed he paid attention to her interests. A book of poetry she had mentioned wanting to read, a new pair of riding gloves when he noticed hers were worn. He was unfailingly respectful, never presuming or pushing for more than she was ready to give. For her part, Zelda found herself opening up in ways she had thought impossible. She shared stories of her childhood, happy memories she had locked away because they hurt too much to revisit. She talked about her dreams, the ones she had abandoned after the raid, of perhaps having her own horse ranch someday, of training horses using gentle methods rather than breaking their spirits. "Why did you abandon those dreams?" Dalton asked one December evening. They were in his kitchen, and Zelda was teaching him to make the sugar cookies her mother used to bake at Christmas. They seemed pointless without family to share them with. What is the point of building something if you have to do it alone? But you would not be alone. You have Mr. Thornton, Mrs. Campbell, the people in town who care about you. He paused, his hands stilling in the cookie dough. You have me. Zelda looked up and found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. There was love in his eyes, clear and honest and patient. He had not spoken the words yet, but they hung in the air between them, waiting for the right moment. "I do not I?" she said wonderingly. "I have you, for as long as you want me, longer if you will let me." Zelda set down the rolling pin and walked around the table to stand in front of him. She had been so afraid for so long, afraid of loss and pain and vulnerability. But Dalton had shown her that fear was not the only option. He had shown her that love was possible, even after terrible tragedy. That joy could coexist with grief. That she could honor her lost family not by refusing to live, but by living fully and well. "I think I am falling in love with you," she whispered, the admission both terrifying and liberating. Dalton's face transformed with joy. "I know I am falling in love with you. I have been since the first day I walked into that general store and saw you, so guarded and hurting but still standing, still surviving. You are the strongest person I have ever met, Zelda. I do not feel strong. Most days I feel like I am barely holding it together." Strength is not the absence of fear or pain. It is continuing on despite them, and you have done that every single day for 3 years. That is strength. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "May I kiss you?" Zelda's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. She had not been kissed since before her family died, and that had been nothing more than an awkward peck from a boy at a church social. This felt momentous, a crossing of some invisible threshold into a new kind of life. "Yes," she breathed. Dalton kissed her softly, sweetly, with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. It was not demanding or aggressive, but rather an offering, a promise of care and cherishing. Zelda felt something inside her, some last locked door swing open. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring into it all the hope and fear and love that she had been too frightened to express. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, and Dalton rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Zelda Emerson. I love your strength and your kindness and your wounded heart that keeps beating anyway. I love who you are and who you are becoming. And if you will have me, I promise to spend every day trying to make you happy." Zelda was crying, but for once they were happy tears. "I love you too, Dalton Xavier. I did not think I could love anyone again, but you changed that. You showed me that my heart was not as broken as I thought." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other while the cookies burned forgotten in the oven, and Zelda felt more alive than she had in 3 years. Christmas came, and for the first time since the raid, Zelda participated in the town's celebrations. She attended the church service on Christmas Eve with Dalton by her side, his hand warm in hers. She accepted invitations to holiday dinners, and found herself actually enjoying the company, the laughter and music and simple human connection she had denied herself for so long. On Christmas morning, Dalton came to the boarding house with a gift, a beautiful hand-tooled leather saddle sized for a woman. "I know you do not have a horse right now," he said, suddenly shy, but I was hoping that might change. I have a young mare, gentle and smart, who needs an owner who will appreciate her. If you would consider taking her, she is yours." Zelda ran her fingers over the intricate tooling on the saddle, a pattern of flowers and vines. "This is too much. I cannot accept something so valuable." "You can and you will. You are meant to work with horses, Zelda. I see how happy you are when you are with them, how you come alive in a way you never do behind that store counter. I know you feel obligated to Mr. Thornton, but he would understand if you wanted to pursue a different path." "I do love working with the horses," Zelda admitted, "but I do not have the money to start my own ranch or even to buy a single good horse." "Then work with me. Be my partner. We could build this ranch together, breed and train horses, make it into something really special. I have the land and the initial stock, but I need your knowledge and skill. We would be equal partners in everything." Zelda looked at him, this good man who had somehow found his way into her carefully guarded heart and made a home there. "Are you asking me to go into business with you?" "I am asking you to build a life with me. The business is just part of it." He took both her hands in his. "I know we have not been courting long by traditional standards. But I also know that life is uncertain and brief, and when you find someone who makes you want to wake up every morning, someone who sees the real you and loves you anyway, you should not let that slip away." "What exactly are you saying, Dalton?" He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple gold band with a small ruby, red as the Texas earth. "I am saying that I want to marry you, Zelda Emerson. I want to build a ranch and a family and a future together. I want to give you back the dreams that were stolen from you. And I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me." Zelda stared at the ring, her mind spinning. Marriage. It was something she had never thought to have, had written off as impossible for someone as damaged as she believed herself to be. But looking at Dalton, seeing the love and hope shining in his eyes, she realized that she was not as broken as she had thought. The cracks in her heart were real, but they did not have to define her. They could be scars that made her stronger rather than wounds that destroyed her. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like flying. "Yes, I will marry you." Dalton whooped with joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed, really laughed for the first time in years. They kissed there in the boarding house parlor, witnessed by a delighted Mrs. Campbell, who immediately burst into tears and started planning the wedding. They were married on a mild February day in 1877, in the small church where Zelda had been attending services. The whole town turned out for the wedding, eager to celebrate the union of two people who had found each other against all odds. Mr. Thornton walked Zelda down the aisle, his eyes misty with fatherly pride. Mrs. Campbell cried through the entire ceremony. Even the normally stoic Sheriff Mackey was seen wiping his eyes during the vows. Zelda wore a simple white dress borrowed from Mrs. Campbell's niece, with wildflowers in her hair that Dalton had picked that morning. She had never felt more beautiful than when she saw herself reflected in Dalton's eyes as she walked toward him. The vows were traditional, but when Dalton promised to love her in sickness and health, in joy and sorrow, until death parted them, Zelda felt the words settle into her bones as truth. This man would keep his promises. This love was real and solid and could be trusted. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Dalton kissed her with a joy that made the small congregation cheer. Zelda kissed him back, pouring into it all the love and gratitude she felt for this second chance at happiness. The reception was held at the town hall, with music and dancing and more food than should have been possible. Zelda found herself swept into dance after dance, first with Dalton, then with Mr. Thornton, then with various townsmen who wanted to congratulate the bride. She was breathless and laughing, her feet aching in her borrowed shoes and completely, perfectly happy. Late in the evening, as the party began to wind down, Dalton pulled her aside. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Xavier, Mrs. Xavier." The name sent a thrill through her. She was no longer alone in the world. She was part of a partnership, a team, a family of two that would hopefully grow. "Yes, let us go home." They rode out to the ranch under a sky brilliant with stars, the bugboard loaded with wedding gifts and well-wishes. Dalton had spent the past week preparing the house for his bride, adding curtains to the windows, building new furniture, making everything as nice as possible with his limited resources. When they arrived, he insisted on carrying her over the threshold, and Zelda laughed at the traditional gesture even as she wrapped her arms around his neck and held tight. He set her down gently in the center of the main room, and for a moment they simply stood there, taking in the reality of their new life together. "I have something else for you," Dalton said. He led her to the window and pointed outside. In the nearest corral stood the mare he had promised her at Christmas, a beautiful dappled gray with intelligent eyes and a gentle demeanor. But she was not alone. Beside her stood a sturdy foal, dark bay with white socks, nursing contentedly. "She foaled last week," Dalton explained. "A little early but healthy and strong. I thought you might like to train him yourself, raise him from the start. He could be the first horse of many, the foundation of our breeding program." Zelda pressed her hand to the glass, her throat tight with emotion. "He is perfect. They are both perfect." "We will build something wonderful here," Dalton said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Not to replace what we lost, but to honor it. We will create a legacy that makes our families proud." Zelda turned in his arms and kissed him, deep and sweet and full of promise. "We will do it together, everything together from now on." Their wedding night was tender and beautiful, a physical expression of the love and trust they had built over months of patient courtship. Dalton was gentle and attentive, making sure Zelda felt safe and cherished. For Zelda, being intimate with another person after so long alone was both frightening and exhilarating, but Dalton's patience helped her relax into the experience. They came together as equals, partners in every sense, and when Zelda fell asleep afterward in her husband's arms, she felt more at peace than she had since before the raid. Life on the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. Zelda gave notice to Mr. Thornton, who was sad to lose her but delighted at her happiness. She threw herself into working with the horses, discovering that her skills had not faded despite years of disuse. Dalton was right. She came alive around the animals in a way she never had in the store. Together, they built the ranch into something special. Dalton handled the business side, making contacts with buyers and managing the finances. Zelda focused on training, using gentle methods that emphasized building trust and partnership with the horses rather than breaking their will. Word spread about the quality of their horses, and soon they had buyers coming from all over Texas and beyond. In late 1877, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She wanted children desperately, wanted to build a family with Dalton, but the memory of losing her own family made her afraid to love anything too much. Dalton understood her fears without her having to voice them. "We cannot let fear rob us of joy," he said, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "This baby is a gift, a new beginning, and whatever happens, we will face it together." His certainty helped Zelda find her own courage. She allowed herself to be excited, to plan and dream and hope. They converted one of the small rooms into a nursery, painting the walls a cheerful yellow, and building a cradle from oak that Dalton cut and milled himself. On a hot July day in 1878, Zelda gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Samuel, after Dalton's father, with the middle name James after Zelda's father. When the midwife placed the tiny, squalling bundle in her arms, Zelda felt her heart crack open in a way that was terrifying and wonderful. She loved this child with an intensity that eclipsed everything else. "He is perfect," Dalton breathed, his finger gently stroking the baby's soft cheek. "You are perfect. Thank you for this gift." The first year of Samuel's life was exhausting and magical. Zelda threw herself into motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything, learning quickly how to soothe his cries and interpret his needs. Dalton was a devoted father, walking the floors with Samuel at night when he was fussy, making silly faces to earn the baby's first smiles, proudly pointing out every developmental milestone. The ranch continued to thrive. They hired a young man named Peter to help with the heavy labor, allowing Dalton more time to help with the baby and giving Zelda time to return to training horses. They bought adjacent land, expanding their grazing areas and increasing their herd. By Samuel's second birthday, they had 30 horses and a growing reputation as the best horse breeders in East Texas. In 1880, Zelda became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder and she was sick frequently. But on a cold February morning, she delivered a healthy baby girl. They named her Hannah Grace, honoring both Dalton's lost sister and the grace that had brought them through so much pain to this place of happiness. Life with 2 young children was chaotic but full of love. Samuel was a curious, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere, already fascinated by the horses. Hannah was a peaceful baby who rarely cried and seemed content to observe the world with solemn dark eyes. One evening, when Samuel was 4 and Hannah nearly 2, the family sat on the porch watching the sunset. Samuel played with a carved wooden horse Dalton had made for him while Hannah dozed in Zelda's arms. Dalton sat beside his wife, his arm around her shoulders, and looked out over the land they had built together. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. Zelda considered the question seriously. There were still hard days when grief ambushed her and she found herself crying for her lost family. There were still nightmares sometimes, fire and screaming that jerked her awake in a cold sweat. But those days and nights were growing fewer and further between, overwhelmed by the joy and purpose she had found. "Yes," she said finally, "I am truly happy. I never thought I could be again, but you showed me it was possible. You taught me that my heart was not broken beyond repair, just wounded, and wounds can heal if you give them time and care." "We healed each other," Dalton corrected. "I was just as lost as you before we met." "We found our way back to life together." Samuel looked up from his toy. "Daddy, can we go see the new foal tomorrow?" "Of course, son. You can help me check on all the babies in the barn. Can I ride Beauty, if your mother says it is all right?" Samuel turned pleading eyes on Zelda, who laughed. "Yes, you may ride Beauty, but you have to wear the saddle properly, no trying to ride bareback like you did last week." "I promise." Samuel jumped up and hugged her legs, careful not to jostle his sleeping sister. Watching her son's enthusiasm, Zelda felt a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. This was what her parents would have wanted for her, not perpetual grief, but life and love and the continuation of family. She was honoring their memory not by freezing herself in the past, but by building a future that embodied the values they had taught her. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a responsible boy who loved horses as much as his parents did. Hannah revealed a quiet strength and a gift with animals that rivaled her mother's. In 1883, Zelda gave birth to twins, another boy and girl they named Matthew and Rose. The house rang with laughter and the controlled chaos of 4 young children. The ranch prospered beyond their wildest dreams. Their horses were sought after throughout the Southwest, known for their intelligence, stamina, and gentle temperament. They employed several hands now and had built additional barns and corrals to accommodate their growing operation. But more important than the financial success was the family and community they had built. The ranch became a gathering place for neighbors, friends stopping by for advice on horse training or just to visit. Zelda and Dalton were known for their generosity, always willing to help a neighbor in need or taking someone down on their luck. One spring day in 1885, when Samuel was 7, Hannah 5, and the twins toddling around getting into everything, an unexpected visitor arrived at the ranch. She was an older woman, weathered and tired, driving a wagon with 2 teenage girls. Zelda recognized immediately the look in the woman's eyes, the same desperate determination she had seen in her own mirror years ago. "Can I help you?" Zelda asked, wiping her hands on her apron as she approached. "I hope so, madam. My name is Martha Willis, and these are my granddaughters, Emma and Sarah. We lost our farm last month to the bank, and we have been traveling looking for work. Someone in town said you might have need of help, someone who could cook and clean in exchange for room and board." Zelda looked at the 3 women, seeing herself in their eyes. She knew what it was like to have lost everything, to be adrift in the world with no clear path forward. Without hesitation, she made the decision. "We do need help, as it happens. The house has gotten away from me with 4 children and the ranch work. If you can cook and help with the children, we can offer you the small cabin out back, meals, and a fair wage besides. The girls can help with lighter chores or go to school in town, whichever you prefer." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, madam. You do not know what this means to us." "I think I do, actually. I was in a similar position once, and someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. I am just passing that kindness forward." Martha and her granddaughters became part of the ranch family. The older woman was an excellent cook and took over running the household, freeing Zelda to spend more time with the horses and children. Emma and Sarah went to school but helped with chores in the evenings, and their youthful energy brought new life to the ranch. That evening, as Zelda and Dalton lay in bed, she told him about her decision to hire Martha. "I hope you do not mind that I did not consult you first," she said. "But when I looked at her, I saw myself 7 years ago, and I could not turn her away." Dalton pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "I would have done the same thing. We have been blessed beyond measure, and it is right to share that blessing with others." "That is what your parents would have done, is it not?" "Yes," Zelda said softly. "That is exactly what they would have done. They always believed in helping those in need. Then we honor their memory by doing the same. We will build a legacy not just of fine horses, but of compassion and generosity." As Zelda drifted off to sleep, she thought about how far she had come from that broken young woman standing in the general store, going through the motions of life without really living. Dalton had shown her that healing was possible, that joy could be found even after terrible loss. But more than that, he had shown her that she had the strength to not just survive, but to thrive and to help others do the same. The years continued their steady march. Samuel grew into a young man who was the image of his father, tall and strong with the same kind eyes. He had a natural gift with horses and was already making a name for himself as a trainer. Hannah developed into a thoughtful young woman with her mother's quiet strength and her father's gentle heart. The twins, Matthew and Rose, were inseparable and brought endless energy and mischief to the household. In 1890, When Zelda was 38, she stood on the porch of the ranch house watching Samuel work with a young colt in the corral. He was 17 now, nearly a man, and handled the horse with patience and skill that made her proud. Hannah sat on the fence nearby, reading a book, but occasionally looking up to offer advice. The twins chased each other around the yard, their laughter ringing out across the ranch. Dalton came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "How different my life could have been. If you had not walked into that general store, if I had not taken a chance on trusting you, if I had stayed locked in my grief. I could have spent my whole life just existing, never really living. But you did not. You chose life, Zelda. I just showed you it was an option. You did the hard work of healing. We did it together. I could not have done it alone. You underestimate yourself. You are the strongest person I know." Zelda turned in his arms to face him. "I am only strong because you gave me a reason to be. You and the children, this ranch, this life we have built, that is what made me strong." Dalton kissed her soft and sweet, the kiss of long familiarity and enduring love. 17 years married, and I love you more today than I did the day we wed. Only 17 years. It feels like I have loved you forever." They stood together on the porch, watching their children and looking out over the land they had built from nothing. The ranch sprawled across several hundred acres now, with multiple barns and corrals, fields of grazing horses, and sturdy fences marking boundaries that represented years of hard work and dedication. But more than the physical evidence of their success, Zelda felt the richness of the life they had created. This was not just a business or a property. This was a home filled with love and laughter, a place where wounds healed and hope flourished. In 1892, Samuel married a lovely young woman named Catherine from a neighboring ranch. The wedding was a grand affair with half of East Texas in attendance, and Zelda cried happy tears as she watched her eldest son pledge his life to another. A year later, Hannah married a kind young man named Robert who worked as a lawyer in Jefferson. The house felt emptier with the older children moved out, but they visited often, and soon there were grandchildren to spoil. The twins were still at home, now 14 and full of life. Matthew wanted to be a veterinarian, and spent all his free time reading medical books and practicing on any animal that would hold still. Rose had inherited her grandmother's fierce independence and announced her intention to go to college, something that was still unusual for women, but that Zelda wholeheartedly supported. One evening in late 1895, Zelda and Dalton sat on the porch watching the sunset, as they had done countless times over the years. They were in their 40s now, no longer young but not yet old, settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long and happy marriage. "Do you remember when we first sat here together?" Dalton asked. "Before we were married, when you were still building walls around your heart. I remember. You were so patient with me, never pushing, just waiting for me to be ready. I would have waited forever if that was what you needed." Zelda took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I am so grateful I did not make you wait that long. These years with you have been the happiest of my life. You gave me back everything I thought I had lost: family, purpose, joy. You showed me that life could be beautiful again even after it had been so cruel. We gave that to each other. I was just as broken as you before we met, just hiding it better perhaps. We healed together, built a life together, and created something better than either of us could have managed alone." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. In the distance, horses grazed peacefully, their forms shadowy in the fading light. From inside the house came the sound of the twins arguing good-naturedly about something, Martha's voice calling them to dinner. This was home. This was family. This was the life that Zelda had never dared to hope for during those dark years after the raid. She had been so broken, so certain that joy was forever beyond her reach. But Dalton had shown her differently. With his patience and kindness, his steady love and unwavering support, he had taught her that healing was possible, that second chances existed, that the heart could mend if given the right conditions. "I love you, Dalton Xavier," Zelda said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I love you too, Zelda Xavier, and I never could have given up on you. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were someone special, someone worth fighting for." As the stars began to emerge overhead, one by one piercing the deepening blue of the sky, Zelda felt complete peace. The scars from her past would always be there, marks of what she had endured and overcome, but they no longer defined her. She was not the broken woman who had stood behind that store counter, numb and disconnected from life. She was a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a rancher, a valued member of her community. She was whole. The years continued to unfold with their mixture of joy and challenge, triumph and sorrow. In 1898, Zelda and Dalton celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a party that drew friends and family from across the state. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, and Zelda looked around the gathering with wonder at how much her family had grown. Samuel and Catherine had 3 children now, 2 boys and a girl. Hannah and Robert had just welcomed their first baby, a daughter they named Zelda after her grandmother, which had made Zelda cry with happiness. Matthew had just been accepted to veterinary school, and Rose was preparing to leave for college in the fall. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, Dalton pulled Zelda onto the makeshift dance floor for one last waltz. They moved together easily, bodies familiar after 20 years of shared life. 20 years, Dalton marveled. It has gone by so fast. "The best years of my life," Zelda replied. "Thank you for all of it, Dalton. For giving me a reason to live again. For showing me that beauty existed even after terrible tragedy. For being the kind of man who makes the world better just by being in it. You give me too much credit. You did the hard work of healing yourself. I just held your hand while you did it. You did so much more than that. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You saw potential in me when all I saw was brokenness. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable." Dalton pulled her closer, his cheek resting against her hair. "You were always lovable, Zelda. You just could not see it yet. And watching you blossom over these years, seeing you transform from that guarded woman in the general store to the confident, joyful person you are now, that has been the greatest privilege of my life." As they danced under the stars, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together, Zelda reflected on her journey. She had been so broken by life's cruelty, shattered by loss and locked in grief. She had believed herself beyond repair, destined to live out her days in emotional isolation. But a kind cowboy had shown her differently. With patience and gentleness, with steady love and unwavering support, Dalton had helped her see that healing was possible. That joy could be found again. That life, even after terrible tragedy, could still be beautiful. And it was beautiful. So very beautiful. The new century arrived with celebration and optimism. The ranch was more successful than ever, and the Xavier name was synonymous with quality horses throughout the Southwest. Samuel had taken over much of the day-to-day operation, allowing Dalton and Zelda to step back and enjoy their grandchildren. Little Zelda, Hannah's daughter, showed early signs of having her grandmother's gift with animals. At just 3 years old, she could calm a skittish horse with nothing more than her presence. Watching her reminded Zelda of herself at that age, following her father around their ranch in West Texas, learning everything she could about horses. One warm spring day in 1901, Zelda took her namesake granddaughter out to see the newest foals. The little girl's face lit up with delight as a wobbly-legged baby approached them curiously. "Careful, sweetheart," Zelda cautioned. "Let him come to you, do not chase him." Little Zelda stood perfectly still, her small hand outstretched, until the foal came close enough to sniff her fingers. When his soft nose touched her palm, the child giggled with pure joy. Watching this simple interaction, Zelda felt her throat tighten with emotion. This was legacy. Not just the ranch or the horses or the business success, but this knowledge being passed down through generations. Her father had taught her. She had taught Samuel and Hannah, and now she was teaching her granddaughter. The circle continuing, love and wisdom flowing from one generation to the next. "Grandma, he likes me," little Zelda exclaimed. "Of course he does. Animals know a kind heart when they meet one." Later that evening, Zelda shared the experience with Dalton as they prepared for bed. "It made me think of my father," she said softly. "How patient he was, teaching me everything about horses. I thought those memories would always hurt, but today, they just made me grateful. Grateful that I had him, even if it was not for as long as I would have liked. Grateful that I can pass his wisdom on to our grandchildren." Dalton pulled her into his arms. "That is healing, Zelda. Not forgetting the pain, but being able to remember the joy without being destroyed by the loss. Your father would be so proud of you, of everything you have built and become." "I hope so. I hope they all would be proud, my whole family. I spent so long feeling guilty for surviving, for moving on with my life. But I understand now that living fully, loving completely, building something meaningful, that is how I honor their memory. Not by staying frozen in grief, but by embracing the life they would have wanted me to have." "They would be proud," Dalton assured her. "How could they not be? Look at what you have accomplished. You survived devastating loss, rebuilt your life from nothing, raised wonderful children, created a successful business, and helped countless people along the way. You turned your pain into purpose and your grief into grace." Zelda smiled at his words. "We did all of that together. I could never have done any of it without you. Then we are fortunate to have found each other. Two broken people who mended together and created something beautiful from the pieces." As Zelda drifted off to sleep that night, safe in her husband's arms, she thought about the young woman she had been when they met. That woman had been so damaged, so certain that happiness was forever beyond her reach. If she could speak to that younger self now, what would she say? That healing takes time but is possible. That love can be trusted again, even after terrible loss. That joy and sorrow can coexist, that you can remember and grieve your lost loved ones while still embracing new love and happiness. That second chances exist, that new beginnings are possible, that life can be beautiful again even after it has been unspeakably cruel. Most of all, she would tell that younger self to hold on, to keep surviving day by day, even when it feels pointless. Because you never know when a kind cowboy might walk into your life and show you that hope still exists. The years continued their steady progression. In 1905, Zelda and Dalton celebrated both their 27th wedding anniversary and Zelda's 53rd birthday. Their children were all thriving, established in careers and families of their own. The grandchildren numbered 8 now, ranging from teenagers to toddlers, and family gatherings were loud, chaotic, and filled with love. The ranch had evolved over the years, adapting to changing markets and new opportunities. They had reduced their breeding program somewhat, focusing on quality over quantity, but they had added a training facility where young cowboys could learn proper horsemanship. Samuel ran that program, passing on the gentle methods his parents had taught him. One summer evening, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a reunion. Children ran everywhere, their laughter echoing across the property. The adults sat on the expanded porch, drinking lemonade and catching up on each other's lives. Zelda sat in her favorite rocking chair, Dalton beside her, and looked out at the assembled family with profound contentment. Hannah approached with little Zelda, now 7 years old, and every bit as horse-crazy as her grandmother had been. "Mama, this one has a question for you," Hannah said with a smile. Little Zelda climbed onto her grandmother's lap, all skinny arms and legs and serious dark eyes. "Grandma, Daddy said you used to be very sad before you met Grandpa. Is that true?" Zelda met Hannah's eyes over the child's head, silently asking permission to answer honestly. Hannah nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, that is true. Something very bad happened to my family when I was young, and for a long time I was very sad. But you are not sad anymore, right?" "Not sad like I was then. I still feel sad sometimes when I remember the people I lost. But mostly I feel happy now. Happy because of your grandpa and your mama and you and everyone here." "What made you not sad anymore?" Zelda thought carefully about how to answer. "Your grandpa helped me see that even when bad things happen, good things can still come. He showed me that my heart was not broken forever, just hurt for a while, and he was very patient while I learned to be happy again." Little Zelda considered this seriously. "So if something bad happens to me, I can still be happy later?" "Yes, my darling. You can always find happiness again if you are brave enough to look for it and accept it when it comes." The child seemed satisfied with this answer and ran off to join her cousins. Hannah sat down in the chair her daughter had vacated. "Thank you for being honest with her. I want her to understand that difficult feelings are normal but do not have to be permanent. It is an important lesson, one I wish I had learned earlier." They sat together watching the children play as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Zelda felt Dalton's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "Are you happy, Mama?" Hannah asked softly. "Truly happy." Zelda looked at her daughter, seeing traces of herself in Hannah's features, but also so much of Dalton. This beautiful young woman, along with her siblings, represented the future that Zelda had never dared to dream of during those dark years after the raid. "Yes, my darling. I am truly, deeply happy. There was a time when I thought happiness was impossible for me, that I was too broken to ever feel whole again. But your father showed me I was wrong. He taught me that with love and patience and courage, even the most wounded heart can heal. And all of this," she gestured at the assembled family, the ranch, the life they had built. "This is more than I ever dared to hope for." As the evening drew on and families began to depart for home, Zelda and Dalton stood on the porch waving goodbye. Samuel and his family were the last to leave, and their eldest son, now 15 and already working seriously with horses, hung back to speak with his grandfather about a training technique. Zelda watched them together, 4 generations of horse wisdom evident in the conversation. Her father had taught her. She had taught Samuel. Samuel was teaching his son. The legacy continuing, growing, evolving. After everyone had gone and the ranch was quiet except for the usual animal sounds, Zelda and Dalton prepared for bed. It was a familiar routine, comfortable as an old shoe, and Zelda treasured it. These quiet moments together after more than a quarter-century of marriage were precious. "Thank you," she said as they settled under the covers. "For what? For everything. For seeing past my walls to the person underneath. For being patient when I was difficult. For showing me that life could be beautiful again. For giving me this family, this home, this life. For loving me when I could barely love myself." Dalton pulled her close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done," he said. From that first day in the general store, I saw your strength and resilience, even if you could not see it yourself. You were never as broken as you believed, Zelda, just wounded, and wounds heal given time and care. We healed each other. You were wounded too. We did. Two damaged people who found each other and built something beautiful from the pieces. That is what I am most proud of, not the ranch or the business success, but this, us, the life we created together. Zelda lifted her head to kiss him, a soft kiss of gratitude and enduring love. I love you, Dalton Xavier. Thank you for showing me that second chances are real. I love you too, Zelda Xavier. Always have, always will. As they drifted off to sleep, Zelda reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The path from that broken young woman in the general store to the content grandmother lying beside her husband had been long and sometimes painful. There had been setbacks and hard days, moments when the old grief threatened to pull her under. But with Dalton's steady presence and unwavering love, she had learned to navigate those difficult times without being destroyed by them. She had discovered that joy and sorrow could coexist, that you could honor lost loved ones while still building a new life, that happiness after tragedy was not only possible but could be profound and lasting. Most importantly, she had learned that she was stronger than she ever imagined. The young woman who had believed herself broken beyond repair had actually been incredibly resilient, capable of surviving devastating loss and rebuilding a meaningful life. That strength had always been there. She just needed someone to help her see it. The years continued their gentle progression. Dalton and Zelda grew older together, their hair graying, their movements slowing, but their love only deepening with time. They reduced their work on the ranch gradually, trusting more to Samuel and the capable hands they employed. This gave them time to travel a bit, to visit Hannah in Jefferson and Samuel's family, to simply enjoy the fruits of their decades of hard work. In 1910, they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them. The ranch hands had prepared a special meal, and Dalton had somehow procured a bottle of fine wine, a luxury in rural Texas. 32 years, Zelda marveled, looking at her husband across the candlelit table. His hair was silver now, his face lined with age, but to her he was still the kind cowboy who had walked into the general store and seen past her walls to the person she could become. The best 32 years of my life, Dalton replied. I cannot imagine what my life would have been like if I had not wandered into that store looking for supplies all those years ago. Lonely, I suspect, as mine would have been without you. Do you ever regret it? Marrying me, the hard work of building this ranch, any of it? Zelda shook her head emphatically. Not for a single moment. You gave me back my life, Dalton. You showed me that even after terrible loss, beauty and joy were still possible. You were patient with me when I was difficult, kind when I was closed off, loving when I felt unlovable. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You give me too much credit. You did the hard work of healing yourself. We healed each other. That is the truth of it. We were both broken in different ways, and we mended together, made each other whole. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, then moved to the porch to watch the sunset, as they had done countless times over the decades. The ranch sprawled around them, a testament to their hard work and dedication. But more than that, it was a testament to the healing power of love, to the possibility of second chances, to the resilience of the human spirit. I want you to know something, Zelda said as the sky blazed orange and purple. If I could go back and talk to that young woman I was when we met, the one so locked in grief she could barely function, I would tell her to hold on. I would tell her that a kind cowboy was coming, someone who would show her that life could be beautiful again. I would tell her that healing is possible, that joy will return, that her heart is not broken beyond repair. Dalton took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. What would you tell her about us, about this life we built? I would tell her it is better than anything she dared to dream, that she will love more deeply than she thought possible after such loss, that she will raise children and grandchildren who carry forward the legacy of the family she lost, that she will build something meaningful and lasting, that every day with this good man will be a gift, that the pain will never completely disappear, but it will be balanced by so much joy that it becomes bearable. That is beautiful, Zelda. It is true. All of it is true. You showed me that life's cruelty does not have to be the final word, that beauty can grow even in the hardest soil, that love is always worth the risk. They sat together as the stars emerged, one by one, pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. Zelda thought about all the people who had shaped her journey, her parents and brothers who had loved her and taught her, whose loss had nearly destroyed her. Mr. Thornton, who had given her a job when she desperately needed one. Mrs. Campbell, who had provided a safe home. Martha and her granddaughters, who they had helped in turn. Their children and grandchildren who represented the future. But most of all, she thought about the man sitting beside her, the kind cowboy who had walked into her life at exactly the right moment and shown her that hope still existed. He had not pushed or demanded or tried to fix her. He had simply offered steady, patient love and let her heal in her own time and way. That had made all the difference. In the years that followed, Dalton's health began to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down that came with age and a lifetime of hard physical labor. Zelda nursed him through bouts of pneumonia and the aching joints that made moving difficult. She did so with tender care, grateful for every additional day they had together. "I am sorry I am such a burden," Dalton said one day as Zelda helped him into his chair by the fire. It was winter now, and the cold made his arthritis worse. "You are not a burden. You are my husband, and I love you. After everything you did for me, caring for you now is my privilege. I just hate being useless. I should be out working with the horses, helping Samuel, doing something productive." Zelda knelt beside his chair and took his hands in hers. "Dalton Xavier, you listen to me. You have spent your entire life being productive, building this ranch, raising our children, helping countless others. You have more than earned the right to rest. And you are not useless. You are the center of this family, the one we all look to for wisdom and guidance. That has value beyond any physical labor." Dalton's eyes grew misty. "How did I get so lucky as to marry you? I think I am the lucky one. You took a broken woman and showed her how to be whole again. You gave me everything I thought I had lost: family, purpose, love, hope. I can never repay that debt. There is no debt. Love is not a transaction, Zelda. It is a gift freely given and received." They sat together by the fire, hands clasped, as the winter wind howled outside. Zelda thought about all the years they had shared, the struggles and triumphs, the sorrows and joys. Every moment had led to this one. Two people who had found each other in brokenness and built something beautiful together. Dalton lived to see their 35th wedding anniversary in 1912, though by then he was quite frail. The family gathered for a celebration, and he insisted on getting dressed properly and sitting in his chair on the porch to receive everyone. His face lit up when each child, grandchild, and great-grandchild came to greet him, and Zelda saw the deep satisfaction of a life well lived in his eyes. That night, after everyone had gone, Zelda helped him to bed and lay down beside him. "It was a good day," he said softly. "The best. Did you see how many of them there are now? All these lives that exist because we found each other. It is humbling and wonderful." He turned his head to look at her, his brown eyes still warm and loving despite the ravages of age. "Zelda, I need you to promise me something. Anything. When I am gone, and I do not think that will be much longer now, I need you to promise you will keep living. Really living, not just existing. You have come too far and fought too hard to slide back into that numbness you lived in before we met." Tears filled Zelda's eyes. "Do not talk like that. You are going to be fine." "We both know that is not true. I am not afraid of dying, Zelda. I have had a wonderful life, far better than I had any right to expect after I lost my first family. But I cannot bear the thought of you retreating into yourself again, shutting out joy and love because you are grieving me. I do not know if I can do this again, lose someone I love so much and keep going. Yes, you can. You are the strongest person I have ever known, and you will not be alone. You have our children, our grandchildren, an entire community that loves you. Promise me you will lean on them, let them help you through the grief. Promise me you will find joy again, even if it takes time." Zelda could barely speak through her tears. "I promise. I will try." That is all anyone can do. Try. He reached up with a trembling hand and wiped her tears away. "I love you, Zelda Emerson Xavier. Loving you has been the greatest joy and privilege of my life. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy all those years ago. I love you too, Dalton. More than words can express. Thank you for showing me that life could be beautiful again. Thank you for being patient and kind and loving. Thank you for giving me back my heart." They held each other through the night, and when morning came, Dalton did not wake up. He had passed peacefully in his sleep, his wife in his arms, surrounded by the love they had built together. The grief was devastating, but different from what Zelda had experienced after the raid. This grief was clean and honest, unburdened by guilt or anger. Dalton had lived a full life and had died peacefully, and Zelda could be grateful for that even as she mourned his loss. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives Dalton had touched over the years. As Zelda listened to person after person share stories of his kindness and generosity, she felt proud rather than simply sad. He had lived well and loved deeply, and that was all anyone could ask for. In the days and weeks after the funeral, Zelda struggled. The house felt empty without Dalton's presence, and there were moments when the grief threatened to overwhelm her. But she remembered her promise to him, and she leaned on her family as she never had before. Samuel moved his family onto the ranch to be closer to her. Hannah visited weekly from Jefferson. The grandchildren came and went constantly, filling the house with life and noise that helped chase away the loneliness. Martha, now quite elderly herself, moved back into the main house to keep Zelda company. Slowly, painfully, Zelda found her way through the grief. She let herself cry when she needed to, but she also let herself laugh at good memories. She kept working with the horses because that connection to the past and to Dalton brought her comfort. She invested in her relationships with her children and grandchildren, finding purpose in being present for their lives. And most importantly, she kept living. Really living, not just existing. Because that was what Dalton would have wanted, and honoring his memory meant embracing life the way he had taught her to do. One spring day in 1913, about a year after Dalton's death, Zelda stood in the cemetery beside his grave. She came regularly, finding comfort in talking to him even though she knew he was gone. "I miss you," she said softly. "Every single day I miss you, but I am keeping my promise. I am living, really living. The ranch is doing well. Samuel is a wonderful manager, and his son is showing real promise with the horses. Hannah's children are thriving. Rose just graduated from college, first in her class. Matthew has his own veterinary practice now and is very successful." She paused, running her hand over the smooth marble of the headstone. "I want you to know that what you did for me, showing me that life could be beautiful after tragedy, that gift keeps giving. I am teaching our grandchildren and great-grandchildren the same lesson. When they hurt, I show them how to grieve honestly but then move forward. When they struggle, I share my story of how broken I was and how you helped me heal. Your legacy is not just this ranch or our family, but the lesson that love and hope can overcome even the darkest times." A soft breeze ruffled her hair, and Zelda smiled. "I like to think that is you, letting me know you hear me. I know it is probably just the wind, but I choose to believe anyway. You taught me that hope is a choice after all." She stayed a bit longer, then walked back to her wagon. The ranch spread before her, greening up with spring growth, horses grazing peacefully in the pastures. It was beautiful, and Zelda allowed herself to feel joy at the sight without guilt. Dalton had been right. Life was still beautiful, even after loss. Joy could coexist with sorrow. The heart could mend without forgetting. She had learned those lessons once after the raid, with Dalton's patient help. Now she was learning them again, this time without him physically present, but with his teachings so deeply embedded in her heart that she could draw on them for strength. In the years that followed, Zelda found a new rhythm to her life. She remained active in the ranch, working with horses until she was well into her 60s. She delighted in her ever-growing family, watching great-grandchildren be born and take their first steps. She became a pillar of the community, known for her wisdom and generosity, always ready to help someone in need. And she told her story. When young people came to her struggling with loss or grief, she shared how broken she had been and how a kind cowboy had shown her that healing was possible. She talked about the importance of patience, of allowing yourself to grieve without judgment, of staying open to joy even when it feels impossible. Many found comfort and hope in her words. On a warm June day in 1920, Zelda celebrated her 68th birthday surrounded by her family. There were more than 50 people present, all connected to her through blood or love. As she looked around at the assembled crowd, she felt overwhelming gratitude. "I want to say something," she announced, and the crowd quieted. "Many of you know my story, how I lost my family in a Comanche raid when I was just 18, how I spent years locked in grief and numbness, barely functioning. What saved me was love. Your grandfather Dalton saw past my walls and showed me that life could still be beautiful, that my heart was not broken beyond repair. He taught me to hope again, to love again, to live again." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. But the story did not end when he died. "I had to learn those lessons all over again, to choose life even when grief made it hard. And I did because of all of you. Your love, your support, your presence in my life gave me reason to keep going. So I want to thank you, all of you, for being my family and my joy. You are Dalton's legacy and mine, proof that love and hope can overcome even the darkest times." There was not a dry eye in the crowd. Samuel came forward and hugged his mother tightly, followed by Hannah, Matthew, and Rose, and then all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren wanting their turn to embrace Grandma Zelda. As the sun set that evening and the party wound down, Zelda sat in her rocking chair on the porch, the same chair where she and Dalton had spent countless evenings watching the sunset together. She thought about the young woman she had been, so broken and convinced she would never be whole again. If she could speak to that young woman now, she would tell her that the journey would be hard but worth it. That love would find her when she least expected it. That healing would come slowly but surely. That life would be beautiful again, more beautiful than she could imagine. She would tell her that a kind cowboy would walk into the general store one day and change everything. That he would be patient and gentle, that he would see her worth when she could not see it herself, that he would show her how to live again. That together, they would build something wonderful, a family and a ranch and a legacy of love. Most importantly, she would tell her younger self that she was stronger than she knew, that she would survive not one terrible loss but two, and come through both still capable of joy. That her heart, though scarred, would prove resilient beyond measure. As the stars emerged overhead, Zelda closed her eyes and felt at peace. She had lived a good life, a full life, a life rich with love and purpose. She had been broken by life's cruelty at 18, but a kind cowboy had shown her that life could be beautiful again. And it had been, beyond her wildest dreams. The years continued to pass gently. Zelda lived to see the roaring 20s bring changes to Texas and the world, though the ranch remained largely traditional, focused on quality horses and solid values. She watched her great-grandchildren grow and marry and have children of their own, extending the family tree ever further. In 1925, on her 73rd birthday, the family gathered once more. Zelda was quite frail by now, her movements slow and her energy limited, but her mind remained sharp and her spirit strong. As she sat in her chair surrounded by more than 75 family members spanning 5 generations, she felt deeply content. Little Hannah, named for both Zelda's daughter and Dalton's sister, was now a young woman of 23. She had inherited the family gift with horses and was making a name for herself as a trainer. She approached her great-grandmother with a special gift, a portrait she had commissioned of Dalton and Zelda on their wedding day, painted from an old photograph. Zelda held the portrait with trembling hands, tears streaming down her weathered face. "It is beautiful, my dear. Thank you. I wanted you to remember how it all started, how Grandpa Dalton found you when you were sad and showed you how to be happy again. You have told us that story so many times, and it always gives me hope that no matter how hard things get, love can make it better." Zelda pulled the young woman close. "Never forget that, sweetheart. No matter what life brings you, and it will bring both joy and sorrow, remember that you are strong enough to survive it. And love, real love, can heal even the deepest wounds. Your great-grandfather taught me that, and it changed everything." That night, as the party ended and the house grew quiet, Zelda sat looking at the portrait. She traced Dalton's face with her finger, remembering his kindness, his patience, his unwavering love that had quite literally saved her life. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for loving me when I was difficult, for showing me that second chances are real, for giving me this beautiful life. I will see you soon, my love." Zelda Emerson Xavier passed away peacefully in her sleep that night, surrounded by the evidence of the life she and Dalton had built together. She was 73 years old and had lived to see 5 generations of their family thrive. At her funeral, person after person stood to share how Zelda had impacted their lives. Stories of her generosity, her wisdom, her kindness. But most often, people talked about her message of hope, how she had survived terrible tragedy not once but twice and had still found joy. How her story had inspired them to keep going through their own dark times. Samuel, now in his 40s and managing the ranch that his parents had built, stood last. "My mother used to tell us that she was broken by life's cruelty at 18. That our father, a kind cowboy, showed her that life could be beautiful again. But I think the truth is even better than that. She was never broken, just wounded. And my father did not fix her, he walked beside her while she healed herself. Together, they built something amazing, not just this ranch or our family, but a legacy of hope that will outlive us all." He paused, his voice breaking with emotion. "They are together now, and I like to think they are sitting on some heavenly porch, watching the sunset and holding hands, just like they did for so many years here. They taught us how to love, how to survive loss, how to find joy even in sorrow. That is the gift they gave us, and we will pass it on to our children and grandchildren, keeping their love alive through the generations. Zelda was buried beside Dalton, and on her headstone, her family had inscribed words that captured the essence of her life. She survived life's cruelty and found beauty again through love. Her legacy lives on in all she touched. The ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's management and eventually under his children's care. The Xavier name became legendary in Texas, synonymous with quality horses and solid values. But more than that, it became associated with the story of Dalton and Zelda, the kind cowboy and the broken woman who found each other and built something beautiful. Their great-great-grandchildren still work the ranch today, training horses using the gentle methods Zelda learned from her father and passed down through the generations. The main house still stands, lovingly preserved, and visitors can see the porch where Zelda and Dalton spent countless evenings together. But the real legacy is not in buildings or bloodlines or even horses. It is in the lesson that Zelda learned and shared, that no matter how broken you feel, healing is possible. That love can be trusted again after loss. That joy and sorrow can coexist. That second chances are real. That life, even after terrible cruelty, can be beautiful again. All because a kind cowboy walked into a general store in Jefferson, Texas in 1876 and saw not a damaged woman, but someone worth loving. And that love, patient and persistent and pure, changed everything.